All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations that are based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. And right now I am in the third module, which is on CSS, and I'm right near the bottom, and we're talking media queries. And we left off last time as we got into this, adding more complex media queries. And you've already seen this, but let's just take a look. So when I showed you the examples, I had min width of something and max width of something, but you can combine anything basically that you want to combine using either and or. So this says if the minimum width is 600 pixels and the orientation is landscape, so of course in here they would both have to be true, as opposed to this one with OR logic. All right. So it says if we have a series of queries, any of which can come in here. So this is one, and this is another. All right. So that basically is going to handle an OR, not the word OR. We've got the word and, but here we're just combining two of them with a comma. There's also not logic, not, where you negate things. All right, one of the most important parts of this is how to choose breakpoints. Okay, and it says in the early days of responsive design, many designers would attempt to target very large screen sizes because that's about all that were out there. Now there's way too many screen sizes to even think that you can handle all of them. And as mentioned there, and you can see the word that's bolded, the points at which a media query is introduced are known as breakpoints. All right, so why does that matter? Well, I can look up here and I can type in media query breakpoints, and it'll show me some of them. All right, so here's one, extra small devices. So portrait phones, etc. This is 576 or less. Small devices, medium devices, large devices, extra large devices. So we could have used these numbers as well. I just used the example that Mr. Traversy used, all right? But there's a lot of different ways that this can be done. So they're mentioning here, it says broadly, you can take two approaches to responsive design. You can start with expecting that most of your users are going to use the biggest size and work your way down, or you can expect that most of them are going to use the smaller size and work your way up. Using the second approach here, the smaller size is a mobile-first design. Typically, it's the best one to follow, and the reason for that is you do more work getting stuff to look nice on a small device than you do getting it to look nice on a large device. All right, so it says the below walkthrough walks you through this approach with a very simple layout. In a production site, you probably have more stuff to do, but they're trying to keep it simple. All right, so it says our starting point is an HTML document, which is right here. So let's start with this. Let's just grab the HTML document with absolutely no CSS in it whatsoever. So I'm going to grab that. What I have been using in here, close that, is I've been using this download file. All right, so there that is. Remove it, and now it's all in here. This is the same thing. I just copied it over. Now remember, there's absolutely no CSS in here. So let's take a look at what downloads looks like right now. Not much. All right, that's it. Literally, that's it. Okay. So that's our starting point. So what do we have in here? Well, let's just break this thing down. Here's our CSS. So for the entire document, we want the box sizing border box, which again means that as we go and add margin and padding, etc., don't have it add on to the size of whatever it is we're working with. The body should be at 90%. The margin should be 2M top and bottom, and centered basically left and right. The font should be a Arial font. All right, and they're doing some math here. I'm not going to worry about that. If we've got a link that's a regular link or a visited link, the color is going to be, I think that's a grayish. Unordered lists that are inside of navs and ULs will have the dots taken away and no padding. Excuse me. The link, nav links and nav visited are going to have this. Hover will have this. We've got a class called related, a class called sidebar, and our articles will look like this. So let's grab all of this and we'll put it inside of the style tag. If there is no style tag, rather, we'll add one. So let's see. Wow, there's not much of anything in there. So let's do this. Cheat a little bit here. I'm going to grab this stuff that I've got here from my I Love Missouri, and we'll just paste that in right here. All right, so that got us down to here. So let's finish up our head. And then there's the body. And we'll finish up our HTML tag down here. All right, I'm just adding in the minimum of what I need to add in. Now, here's my beginning style tag. There's my ending style tag. And I'm going to come in here and add in the actual style from the document that we had here. So copy that. I'm not going to worry right now about prettying it up. All right, and maybe I will. Just grab this. That looks good enough. All right, so let's take a look at how we've changed the document from the way it looked originally, which was like this. Now it looks a little bit nicer. It looks a little bit more like a, quote, real document, unquote. All right. We've made no layout changes. However, the source is ordered in a way that makes the content readable. This is an important first step. Well, of course it is. You should lay it out at least minimally the way, pretty much the way that it looks, without any CSS, but people should be able to look at it and understand what's going on. The simple layout also works well on mobile. If we view the layout in responsive mode in DevTools, we can see it works pretty well and straightforward. Well, let's look. So there it is, and we'll make this smaller. Yeah, that doesn't look terrible at all. It's adapting, in other words. Okay. It says from this point on, start to drag the responsive view mode wider until you can see the line lengths are becoming quite long and we have space for the navigation to display in a horizontal line. This is where we'll add our first media query. So they want, typically again, media queries get added to the bottom, just so you know. So I'm going to put this in here. Let's put it in, and then we'll come back, take a look at it, talk about what it's doing. So this says if we've got a minimum width of 40 EM, which I think will be 640 pixels, and for the screen, articles should display in a grid format. So we're going to be using CSS grid. We're going to have columns here, and it looks like we'll have two columns. The first will take 3/4, the second will take 1/4, and there'll be a 20 pixel gap between them. In addition, the unordered list that we have for our navs will now be flexed. Okay, so let's save this. Come back to here and refresh. All right, and you can see how different it looks. Now, when it hits that 640 pixels, it reverts back basically to the way it looked to begin with. But after that, you can see what happens. And again, this is all being done via the use of media queries. All right, so it says the CSS gives us a 2-column layout inside the article. We've also used Flexbox to put the navigation in a row. Okay, let's continue to expand the width until we feel there's enough room for the sidebar to also form a new column. Inside the media query, we'll make the main element a 2-column grid. We need to remove the margin bottom so the sidebar is aligned and add a border to the top of the footer. It says typically these small tweaks are the kind of things you'll do to make sure that at each breakpoint this looks good. So the other one was at 40 em. This is at 70 em. So this will be over 1,000 pixels. So let's add that. The order in which you put these two media queries does not matter. All right, you can put either one of these first. Let's see, down to here. I'm going to move that over. And I'm going to move these each over one there. That looks a little nicer. All right, so here's our second one. And it's exactly what I just showed you. All right. Now, let's make this a lot smaller before I refresh. Okay, so here's the refresh. That didn't change anything. But now, once it gets to be a certain width, so notice right here, there's one column right there. And when we reach that other width, there we go. So when we reach the width of whatever that was, 70 ems, and again, I believe that'll be 1120 pixels. Once we reach there, it wants us to take this and move it up to here. And you can see. All right. It also looks like when we reach another point, see that how it's kind of flattening this out a little bit? It says if you look at the HTML and the source at the top, you'll see that it includes this meta tag. We've talked about this viewport meta tag before. As it says there, it exists as a way to control how browsers render content. This is needed because by default, most mobile browsers lie, that's their words, about their viewport width. Non-responsive sites commonly look bad when they're rendered in a narrow viewport. All right. So if something is basically designed to be 960 pixels or above, and you're trying to look at it on a phone, it's going to look real cut off, for lack of better words. It says this is all well and good, but it means that responsive sites are not going to work as expected. To remedy this, including the viewport tag tells your browser don't render the content in a default 960, use the actual width of the device instead. All right, and there's other things that you can put in there. We've actually looked at some of that earlier. All right. Flexbox, grid, multi-column, it says they're all things we can use. All right. And it says basically the part of this says, do you actually need media queries with all this other stuff that you've got in here? All right. It says with the example above, opening the browser, make the screen wider and narrower to see the number of column tracks change. The nice thing about using this method is it's not looking for a viewport width, but the width that is available for the component. All right. So in other words, what they're saying here is if we went in and we grabbed all of this that's in here, we'll try this. So I'm going to copy all of this. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to here and I'm going to literally, other than the stuff for the body, so let's see. Let's comment out all of the media query stuff. Every bit of it. And let's put in the other stuff that they've got in here. All right. Come back to here and to here, refresh, And lo and behold, it's acting the same way that it did originally. And it's doing that without media queries. All right. So what they're saying is anything that you do with media queries, you can basically do without them. It may be more work to do it without them. All right. There's a test your skills in here. I'd strongly recommend giving that a look if you get some time. In this lesson, again, we learned about media queries. You could use the starting point that we have created to test out more queries. Yep, you can and should experiment on all this stuff. So we've now gone through the intro to CSS layout, normal flow, flexbox, grid, floats, positioning, multiple column layout, responsive design, beginner's design to media queries. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 down and 3 to go. So the next one will be on legacy layout methods. And remember, with legacy, that's things that have been around for a while. And I always remember when I was at the first programming job that I ever had, I talked to my boss and he came up to me and said, I've got a job for you. I want you to go to this code that's right here, that's online, and it's not working. I'd like you to find out what the problem is and fix it. I did. It wasn't a big thing. But I noticed that when I ran the code, it was telephony code, so working with the phone. I said there are literally thousands of warnings in this code. The code was really big. All right, we're talking several million lines of code. And I said there are thousands of warnings in here. And I said, do you want me to fix those? And he said, is that stopping it from working? And I said, no. And he goes, then leave it alone. And a lot of times you'll find that things that are older like that, legacy things, and I don't mean to belittle legacy things, but they were created years ago, sometimes at least before some of the modern tools and other things that we use today were not available at that time. So we'll talk legacy in the next lesson.